No one can do your inner work for you, but it doesn't mean that you can or should do it by yourself. Welcome to No Stigma. Hi, guys, and hello, Miss Olga in the house. Thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so obviously today we are going to discuss the link between mental health and domestic violence. And that we know that obviously domestic abuse is associated a lot with depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance misuse. But today I really want to focus on the significant impact it has on survivors' mental health, right? So it is a sensitive topic to discuss. And I just want to thank you for even opening up, about this particular topic. But I think it's so important to actually discuss this. So, how do you, in regards to your actual personal journey with domestic abuse, do you recall how it started? So, just a synopsis of kind of how that journey began initially, if you however you
Yeah.
recall it.
Well, it actually started when I fell pregnant with my son.
Okay.
So the first incident, it was quite
So
quite
prior,
mad.
so prior to that, there
Yeah.
was there was no.
There was no signs. However, there
Mhm,
were looking back, there were signs. It
mhm,
was more of his approach, his controlling behavior started at the beginning when I started to look back, but I didn't see it because they do say when you're with somebody, you never get to see the signs until afterwards.
mhm.
Although the signs are there, you never get to see it until you start reflecting, thinking, "Oh, yeah, it actually started from then." So he had like a controlling behavior at the beginning, but at
Mhm.
that time I thought it was nice and cute.
Yeah.
But
We're going to elaborate
okay,
in
then
that further
that,
because that's a
yeah,
whole section altogether.
indeed,
So it began when you fell pregnant
pregnant.
with your first son. Okay.
So it began when I fell pregnant with my son. It was more of emotional abuse, and then it turned physical abuse
Mhm.
to the point where I had to flee as well. So I basically lost everything. I lost my home, lost my job. I had to literally flee London to make myself safe and my son safe. With the emotional abuse was more of me isolating. And because obviously I was pregnant and I wanted to keep like a family, the family unit where
Mhm.
it's me, my son, and his dad, and try have that, as they like to call it, the generational curse of broken homes. Um, and it wasn't. I'm not going to say it was daily. It was mainly when he did like to drink alcohol a lot, and he was smoking cannabis, and to my understanding and to what I saw and observed of him, I also believe that he was taking other drugs as well,
Okay.
although he had denied it. And when I noticed where he was taking the extra drugs, that's when I saw the more violent stuff. I'll put my hands up. Yes, I did fight back as well. There was time I fought back, but for me, it was more of I was trying to
Defend or.
defend myself, but also trying to defend him in the way to that I didn't want to change him. I wanted him to know that he can be much more of a better person. But he just did not understand that. So when the abuse literally started, it like me staying there, it was for me to try and help him more to for him to understand what kind of person he truly is, as he was a nice person. He had that quality to have that family unit, but somehow he was just fighting with his own demons.
And then you said that you got to a point that you had to flee. Do you remember when was your, because it says that, and we're going to go deeper into dive in deeper into that question, but there is research shows that it takes 7 times usually a survivor or victim of domestic abuse to
To
leave,
leave,
right?
indeed.
So what, you know, what was your that epiphany moment? What happened for you to feel like enough is enough? Was there a particular event that you felt that this was too much? Or maybe is there a significant event, if you're comfortable with it,
Mm-hmm.
that you feel, I can't do this anymore?
Mm-hmm.
That, yeah.
There was the particular event that literally stays in my mind. Um, was I worked at the time I was working with children in early years, and he was doing mad behavior, phoning me, saying all stuff, going to kidnap me, kidnap my son, and whatnot. And went to my manager to speak in confidence. The next day when I came back, the manager actually took my son and said that I had to get somebody to come and get my son because of the safeguarding issue that was in place.
Mm-hmm.
Although I was not with him, but it was more of to safeguard my son and obviously to safeguard myself. And she had the rights to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that was very 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 scary because yeah, social services did come in,
I became involved. Yeah.
became involved. Obviously, looked at my parenting skills. There was no issues with my parenting skills and how my son was developing. He was developing very well, emotionally, physically, all the aspects.
Mm-hmm.
That instant there when the manager told me I had to get somebody to come and collect my son, that was when I was like, no, I cannot do this. I cannot go. I can't
Go back,
go. But
basically.
yeah, literally, it's not even to go back with him because it actually, if I look back and think about it, it actually took me 5 attempts to leave him.
Mm-hmm.
Not seven. It was a five
Yeah.
attempts,
Mm-hmm.
and that that last incident was the breaking point because I just knew I didn't want my son to be in that kind of environment. Um, I didn't want to be in that kind of
Was it a
environment.
physical altercation that happened in that?
It was more. It was yes, there was a physical to the point where obviously, yeah, I lost some parts of my teeth.
You
Uh,
lost your,
some parts of my teeth where he physically abused me,
like, punched you in
punching
your
me
face?
physically. Pulled out my hair.
Mm-hmm.
Had black eyes, busted lips. Yeah, it was bad, and to the point where he actually was going to throw acid in my face. He had the liquid. So at that time, I had to get a family member to get my son, and went straight to women's aid, phoned them up, and it was instant. I have to go, or it's just going to escalate, and I had to literally leave everything,
Mm-hmm.
like my home, job, and leave London for a couple of months.
Mm-hmm. And in that moment, because even when you were saying, you said so much, but when you're talking as if it's like, yeah, and I've got punching my thing and a thing, and there's a lot in that.
That there is.
There's a lot in that.
It is.
So even in that moment when you was going through that, what was going through your mind? Like, what were the feelings that were literally sitting with you when you was going,
I was,
yeah,
I was, I was absolutely scared. I
mm,
was petrified. I was scared. My mind was just going left, right, and center. I wasn't even looking after myself, and to the point I was actually self isolating where no one would see me. Even my mum, my sisters, my friends, no one would see me. If you had saw me, you'd have thought, "Nah, this is not Olga. This is
mm,
not Olga." I literally, my mental health went low to the low, but somehow I still put that front face
a
where,
mask?
yeah, a mask where, yeah, everything's fine. I'm doing very well. My son, literally, as much as I tried to cover it for him not to see it,
Mm-hmm,
he was still happy. He was still happy to be around me,
mm-hmm,
and if it wasn't for that smile that he has, yeah, I probably would. My son would have been taken away from me. I would have
mm-hmm,
probably been homeless.
mm-hmm.
I would have, yeah,
But you say children are very intelligent.
very.
As much as we try to hide even the physical part of it,
Mm-hmm.
children sense your energy, they sense your behavior. We really don't see how switched on they are.
Very.
Was there any time where you actually looked and you saw it take an effect on your son, like either like, was there any time that you actually noticed something, or you never noticed at all?
Um,
It might have been that you
I've
might have
never,
not
I've
noticed.
never really noticed
Mm,
because although I was self isolating,
mhm,
although some people knew a little bit of what
mhm,
the incident was happening, my son always had that happy environment
mhm.
still. Um, Even though
Was
the
the
abuse,
abuse ever in? It wasn't in front of
it
him.
was never in front of him. It was
Okay,
always closed door,
okay.
and when he wasn't
Wasn't around.
around,
Okay.
yeah. But however, he was still in the property in his own room and that.
Mhm,
But he always had happy people around him. So that's
mhm,
one thing I always ensured, that he had happy people. And yeah, he never really shown that until he started getting a little bit older.
Did you have a conversation with
Yeah,
him?
we've had conversation, and not only I experienced that, his brothers as well,
Mm,
experienced it as well.
mm,
So he's got a good relationship with them. So they obviously speak about
mm.
their
The shared
experience, their
experience.
shared
Yeah.
experience in that. And when I get to speak to my son, we have a good conversations, and that,
Mhm,
because sometimes I look at my son and I see certain little behaviors, and like I
mm,
have to try and correct him
mhm,
to obviously understand that certain things you can't be doing.
mhm,
You need to understand this emotion is not a good emotion, and that emotion is not a good emotion. But yeah, with my son, he's actually the bright light
mhm.
that
Of
made me
your.
of my journey. Yeah,
Mm. And let's go back to warning signs,
yeah,
right? Because it's interesting that you said it's when I got pregnant. Because with abusers, usually they will never instantly start abusing you,
yes,
right? They usually wait until that they are, either that person is like
more
in
vulnerable
vulnerable
state.
state, in love, or where they know that this person's not going to leave me. When they feel, okay, this person's not going to leave me, and it's usually when they get married to that person, or whether they have a child, that usually is the peak of most abusers in terms of when they start really abusing.
Mm-hmm.
However, in saying that, so going back to the beginning, where we
Yeah,
talk about red flags,
yeah.
and you completely being transparent and honest, did you see red flags? So you spoke about control, which is
Mm-hmm.
massive power and control,
Yeah.
right? What was those red flags that you can see, which is important for us to have this conversation because we don't know who's listening. And a lot of people are in situations right now where they think, like you actually mentioned, oh, that's him just being sweet.
Yeah.
So elaborate more on that.
Hmm. The red flags, red flags. The signs. So the first, obviously, I said controlling, and it was more controlling in the way I was a breadwinner. I was the breadwinner throughout the relationship, really.
Mm,
So I was the one that was working. I was the one, obviously, driving. Had my own place, and I was doing everything. It was more of where financially for on his side, yeah, he would get his little bit of money and that, but it wasn't as much. He was always asked for my money, obviously take my bank cards. Then it started with kind of like coming home a bit later, late
mm,
at night or in the mornings, where I obviously started to suspect that obviously yes, he was cheating at that time.
mm.
And then
But you didn't
started this
know.
time, yeah, didn't
You
know.
didn't know, but yeah.
No. And
Hmm.
then it started with him controlling the way I dressed. So
Hmm.
obviously, he did not like certain things I was wearing. I had to
Hmm.
go and get changed. Then he started controlling my environment, the people I was around.
So
So
trying to isolate
yeah,
you.
so he tried to isolate
Mm.
me. I had to always be around him. We always had to do things together. And when it's me and him or with his friends, I couldn't even speak to none of his friends. I had to sit in the corner. For me, although I am a bit of a quiet person, I will sit in my corner, and I
Hmm.
didn't mind that because
Mm.
that's just me. I will sit in my corner and mind
Hmm.
my own business. But in that way, it was for him to try and control that, for me not to speak to other guys. Um, I lost a lot of friends as well, where he was controlling my social media accounts, going through my phones, checking my messages. So yeah, so there were the signs, but for me, I wasn't looking at that like
How
as they
was you
like that.
looking at that? Because even hearing that, I'm seeing red
Flags.
flags, girl, run. But how? How in that moment did you actually? Was you that you actually thought actually? Because because that's what it is. You're questioning
Mm-hmm.
your own. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Although they, me saying them, they are
Mm-hmm.
definitely big red flags. For me, it was, yeah, it was. Oh, why is he doing that? Why, like, why is he saying that?
Mm.
Like, but then you have, you always. I had that two voices. I had the two voices where it'd be like, oh yeah, that's cute. The other voice would be like, oh yeah, but why is he doing that? That's not what you should be in a relationship for. That person should be like that. But then I was listening more to the, oh yeah, oh it's cute, or he's being protective, or he's watching over me. That's
Mm.
the way I thought about it, because it was
Mm.
tall, big, and yeah, that's why
You
I
felt
thought
like his behavior was more a sense of him trying
trying
to
to
protect
you.
you, or
Yeah.
didn't, like you're all his,
Mm-hmm.
and
I thought that he was an alpha male, but it was the
mm,
fake alpha male. Shall I put
okay.
it that way?
Mm,
Yeah.
that's very interesting. You spoke about how did he affect you. I think you answered how he affected you during, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how do you. I know you mentioned it already, but if you kind of just further elaborate more, kind of when you was in that situation. I know you mentioned the word fear,
Yeah.
as but how much impact did it have on your mental health? Did it create any conditions? Because obviously, when we go through traumatic experiences, as you know, it create mental health conditions. Um, anxiety disorder. You know, we become depressed.
Pressed. Yeah.
So, how did that impact you whilst you was going through it? And the second part to it, after you've left,
Yeah.
because we always talk about whilst during it, which I want to know, but then I also want to know when you leave,
Mm.
what's the everlasting impact that stays with
Days.
you?
So whilst I was going through it, it's I can't say it's weird, because I'm only sharing it from my experience, because
Of course.
everyone's experience is different. Everyone's
Mm-hmm.
mindset is very different as well.
Exactly.
Whilst I was obviously going through that um abuse with him, mentally I was out of the relationship already,
Mm-hmm.
but physically I was still in that relationship. Although it may sound a bit crazy, but yeah, mentally I was literally out. I had the plans in my head, what I was going to do, how
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to continue to try and be strong as a person. Yes, I did go through depression. I did have anxiety, and for me, at that time, I was actually smoking cannabis quite a lot as well, and I
Mm-hmm.
found cannabis to be like my safe place. I
Mm-hmm.
was in my own zone. I was in my Lululand, as you
So
want to
how did
say
it
it.
make you feel? Did it numb your
It made,
feelings?
yeah, it really did.
Mm-hmm.
It numbed my feelings. It numbed that sadness, that
Mm-hmm.
anger. It numbed the negative feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, till now as well, it
Mm-hmm.
actually numbed that negative feelings. I don't like to feel sad. I don't like to feel certain negative emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And not only was I smoking cannabis, I started drinking as well.
Mm.
So I was drinking not heavily, but I was drinking heavily afterwards.
Okay.
It happened more afterwards while I was drinking
So that
heavily.
was your trauma
That was my
responses going
trauma
into
response.
substances. Okay.
Was mainly drinking alcohol, especially at night time, because obviously at that time I stopped smoking cannabis, but I went into alcohol, and I was more drinking at night time.
Mm.
So as a way, as I said, to numb
Mm-hmm.
me, make me go to sleep, and I was literally happy.
Mm-hmm.
That was
How you
my,
was dealing with it.
yeah. That's the
Mm-hmm.
way I was trying to deal with it. Um, in light to that, I did all my own research. I
Mm-hmm.
looked in a way of how I can better myself and how I can help myself. So I do not fall so much deep into that depression.
Mm-hmm.
I just literally just went did all my own self recovery research. I went counselling. Joined voluntary groups. I even went to domestic groups sessions where
Support
do
groups.
support groups where I was speaking
Mm-hmm.
to other victims and sharing my experience, and then obviously just trying to look more positive way in life.
Mm-hmm.
Although he was still around for my son, because I never stopped him from seeing my son, I still try to let them have that relationship. I just had to make sure I was away from that. So in
Mm-hmm.
order for me to better myself, because when I was seeing and used to see him, I did get scared. I was panicking. I would have that anxiousness, but you will never see it in my face because I just had the numb emotion.
Mm.
So that was it.
And I'm going to go back into a little in terms of what you're saying in terms of
Mm-hmm.
parenting. But
Yeah.
so let's say fast forward now, where you are right now, you've done all that work. Is there anything that you feel can trigger, or does it? Because you know, even emotional abuse. Sometimes talk about physical, but emotional abuse is something that can really, carry
Mm-hmm.
long,
Longer for
longevity and
effect.
long. So,
Mm-hmm.
has it still affected you in afterwards, after you've left, like in the long run, or how has it affected you? Or if not now, I don't know.
Yeah. It doesn't affect me now. It's more affecting my son. The reason why I say that is more of emotional abuse. Because I have a good co-parenting relationship with him, and it's more of an abuse where he says he will see my son but never turns up. So that's it's more of the effect on him. For me, the
Hmm.
aftermath. Now I can literally say, as I'm very smiley. I just get on with life.
Hmm.
I try not to have no no issues. As soon as if I hear any as as soon as I hear any negativity from him on the phone, I literally tell him that I don't have time for this. I really don't have to deal with this. It's
Hmm. So you've placed your
placing my
boundaries quite
boundaries. So
strictly,
yeah,
yeah.
so in that way, he understands my boundaries. But
Mhm.
as I said, as you're talking about the emotional abuse, he tries to use that he tries to use my son,
Manipulate.
manipulate my son in a way to try emotionally abuse, thinking that he's hurting me, but he's more hurting his child.
Mm.
Yeah.
And that's quite difficult. I'm not going to go too much into that, to be fair,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a difficult position to be in, to co-parent with someone that you actually were in a domestic abusive situation.
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, you really have to be strict with boundaries,
Very much so.
and really continuously having discussions with your son, because it is hard. It will be, especially as he's growing up into a young man.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, he would, you know to differentiate certain things. Um, but yeah, I can only sort of imagine that. And it's interesting as well because you mentioned things about the fact that you was working, and you had your life together to a certain extent, and there was, in his part, he wasn't, in terms of finances and his shortcomings in terms of where he maybe wanted to be in his life.
Yeah.
um and it's such a common trait in terms of abusers feeling powerless, feeling insecure.
Yeah.
And that's why we know in therapy we speak about the power and control will, right? And they internally, their objective and their goal is to literally, it's almost like called, life vampires to a certain extent,
Yeah.
because they take your
Your power.
power
Mm-hmm.
from you, your
Indeed.
life, in order for them to self empower
Power
themselves,
themselves.
because they feel powerless internally, insecure. They also are the biggest people that actually wear
Masks. A
masks,
big. Yeah.
right? Because they
Indeed.
go through their own, whatever traumas that they have, they project their pain, their
It
insecurities,
is. They're
their fears, their
suffering onto
issues.
others.
So,
Mm-hmm.
instead of actually getting help for themselves and bearing themselves, what they do instead is like, I'll take that from you, because,
Yeah.
everything that I'm feeling, you're going to
I
feel
feel that
worse,
it's worse.
you
Yeah.
know, and that is the power and control that comes with that level of abuse. So it's interesting, as you were talking, it's like, oh my days, this is always the common theme
Yeah.
consistently. And even in hearing, obviously, that you're someone that I've known for years, like, and I've met this person, and it's interesting because I know someone else that was in domestic abuse, again, a friend. And when I reflect on both of you guys, I never in a million years would have thought that you guys were going through
Through
that
that is.
behind the
Mm-hmm.
closed doors. One, the fact that you've always been a very strong person. And this is the stigma as well. The stigma is that sometimes you see this strong presence of this, a woman usually,
Mm-hmm.
and you think, oh, nah, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Indeed.
but you just never
No,
know.
it's
There
true.
is no, I feel like there is no a set
Said to
person
person how
in a
this
sense,
what
kind of like, how, in terms of how they present themselves, or how, because internally we don't know what's going on with each person individually in a way.
Indeed.
So it was very shocking to me when I was like, what? No. And even worse is the presentation,
Yeah.
because the presentation was very happy. The presentation was very, oh yes, the person themselves, even when I reflect on another person that I know, most friendliest, sweetest, like you never in a million years
Mm.
think that they will be capable
Capable
of
of
that.
that. It's true.
And it's such a narcissistic
Trait and
do you understand, in terms of like
odd.
that they make people externally, people like them, and they put this mask and facade, but behind closed doors they're completely different.
Different, very big time, big
Mm,
time. And with him, throughout the years, whilst obviously watching, observing him, I've always thought that he had mental health, and I've always asked him to go and seek help and support
mhm,
in regards to his mental health. And as you mentioned about trauma, yes, he had trauma as well,
mhm,
childhood trauma. He didn't have the loving family that he had for him to actually know how to
mhm,
love his own family. And yes, it was a big journey for him, and it was a big mask, because as you said, you've met him, you saw him, and he was just the type of person that you think that was so bubbly, chatty, but yeah, behind closed door, he was somebody else.
mhm.
It was some big monster.
And the thing with, sometimes with, you know, I wouldn't just say women, because there's men also in emotion abusive relationships and physical as well
Yeah.
in general. But it's so interesting that the narcissistic trait, they will become the victims in the situation, even though they are the perpetrators. You
Mm-hmm.
made me do
Do
this,
this, yeah.
and there's a thing where, like, you get to that point where, like, you feel that you can help them, and I heard you say that in the beginning, that where you felt you saw the good
In
in
him.
that person.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I saw that little, let me, and you hold on to that goodness, and you think, okay, let me nurture this, because if I can nurture this, and really, he can really be something.
Something, yeah.
He didn't have that, that love from the family. He didn't have all of this, and then we become these, we you know, I don't know, therapist and all these hats, mother, and all these
Nurses,
figures, in
doctors,
order
you
for
name.
him
Mm-hmm.
to kind of become the man that he needs to be.
Be.
But in reality, it's not your job.
No, it's not.
It's not your
It's
role.
not
And where you're saving people that don't even want to be saved.
saved.
And, everything has to start with self. And the work has to be initially from them. And I think sometimes it's that whole thing, oh, I'm going to change, I'm going to get anger management lessons. They don't have to be with you in order to do that.
Do that exactly.
That person, you are the prize. It's almost like, do that journey, do that work, and at the end, that's the prize that you get. You can be in someone's life, maybe as a friend, as like, external support in that sense, but to
Mm-hmm.
be internally in that type of environment with someone that hasn't really done the internal work themselves, and to then put that and project that onto you as that is your, and a lot of people accept almost like those broken
Broken
projects in a
projects.
way,
Very much.
that
Mm-hmm.
don't want to actually do the work themselves.
Self. Mm-hmm.
And it's very, we have to really be aware of what we are actually accepting,
Accepting.
and always trying to see the good in people, because some people will show themselves and we don't believe them.
We don't. Mm-hmm.
If they present
Sent
that to
it
you,
at the
don't go,
beginning.
yeah, they have this
Yeah.
good thing. They are
Just
showing
showing you
you
from the beginning.
from the beginning
From the
who
beginning.
they are,
Ah, indeed.
right? And one of the questions I just wait. Okay, we're good. One of the questions I also wanted to ask you is that, have you, as a child, if you sort of reflect back in your childhood, was you ever exposed or saw any sort of domestic abuse? You don't have to specifically say who if you don't want to. You can just speak in general. But um, was you ever experienced? Was you ever exposed to actually seeing domestic abuse in your childhood before?
And plenty of times.
Okay.
Um, I've seen it within families. I saw it with family friends.
Mm-hmm.
I even saw it on the streets to the
Mm-hmm.
point I even tried to save this lady
Mm-hmm.
from the partner where
Mm-hmm.
he was attacking her. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've seen it. I've
So
seen it.
being like growing up as a child,
Yeah,
it was also around you,
around yeah,
basically,
it was
internally as
around
well,
me.
in terms of family and stuff
Um, from aunties, from
and stuff.
uncles. Yeah,
Mm,
it was
okay.
literally eternally around me where I saw abuse left, right, and center. So.
Yeah, because it's also the reason why I want to highlight that is, you know, with our inner child,
Yeah.
and the things that sometimes we get exposed to, um, where even it becomes almost like a norm.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say, oh yeah, that's something that is good, but we do internalize things when we are children,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what is your relationship with love? What is your relationship with men? What is your relationship with women? And at times we don't even get that guidance or that nurturing to really understand this is what how you should be treated. This is not acceptable. Raising your
Yeah.
voice, speaking out of terms, cheating,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that we were always continuously being exposed to is not of the
No.
norm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like a lot of, statistically in terms of research, a lot of people that actually have been exposed and have grew up around domestic abuse end up,
End up being in an abusive
yeah,
relationship too.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's doing the work and the self work. And I do feel at times that, you did say that you got a lot of, you done your research and to get out of the situation, and you went to groups, and you done fantastic. But I also want to sort of highlight, as that's extremely important, but I feel like we need to, even when time goes by, because as much as we feel like, oh, I'm good, I'm in a better space, we have to almost continues to do an external, like continues to do some
In
sort of
terms of
work.
work, yeah. Huh?
Because a lot of the times, once we kind of overcome that trauma to a certain extent,
Yeah.
like we've over that, I've dealt with that, on to the next, we have this attitude of, okay, on to the next, I'm good enough. Because the reason why is we have to pay attention to the patterns that we bring into other
Relationship.
relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about forever being aware of, forever questioning what we are doing. Like, even though we're not accepting that level of abuse, what do we still accept?
Accept. Yeah.
Right? And that's why it's so important to continuously, and when we do have time, continue to have therapy in one way or another, because that would, again, because even though we are within the mental health, part of our role is to continue to do it
Into
in therapy,
therapy.
especially when we're
Yeah.
containing and holding already a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
because that can only make you the best version, or professionally and personally,
Personally,
right?
very.
So a lot of things that we think that we have overcome, just because we're not in a situation, we're still carrying it,
Carrying it.
even
Very.
if it's
Mm-hmm.
20%.
Yeah.
Because, and you would become more aware of that when you actually see certain
So,
patterns or certain things, and okay, that's not that extreme, so we justify it,
mm-hmm.
right? But how much do we carry people? How much do we I mean, see the good and keep on, because when you already have that healing energy, you sometimes
It's like you're
you
attracting,
attract that.
attracting. Yeah.
So how do we learn to put, we can help, but within boundaries?
Very much so. There,
Yeah.
you have to put big boundaries because I'm a nurturing type of person,
Mm-hmm.
anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry to use the words, I feel like I do leech on to
Mm-hmm.
unhealed people. Unhealed
Mm-hmm.
people will somehow attract to me,
Mm-hmm.
and for some reason I can feel that you're unhealed, but I still want to help you. But I've put a boundary to be like, yeah, I've helped you that part. I can't continue to help you because then I
Mm-hmm.
can start seeing where you're getting too used to my help.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, talking about boundaries, you have to have the boundaries where if you're attracting people who are very unhealed, you will know when somebody's
Mm-hmm.
unhealed. You literally, as you said, the signs are there from the beginning, and you will
Mm-hmm.
know when a person is unhealed. Me being a survivor, it's helped me a lot while I
Mm-hmm.
was doing all my self recovery and
Mm-hmm.
learning all of the signs and knowing when somebody's unhealed. Yes, I am going to help you, but there's a limit.
Mm-hmm. There's
There's
boundaries,
yeah,
yeah.
there's boundaries and
So
there's
what are the
limits.
solutions? So what are the solutions um that you think like that you can share? Not necessarily solutions, sorry. What
Advice,
advice
yeah.
would you give someone, that is going through domestic abuse?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I know you spoke about even safety plans, for example. Um, and I think it's even important to highlight what would you want for family, because a lot of family members and friends can become frustrated at times and even give up. But really, that is the goal of the perpetrator, is to isolate you from
There's
everything.
everyone.
So,
Mm-hmm.
what is your advice for us to sort of end this episode?
So, my advice is make sure to seek help no matter what. As much as your family may get tired, or if you're self isolating, always reach out, because there will always be that one person who will literally help you. I
Mm-hmm.
reached out to obviously my manager at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, she did help me, and it was scary, but I made sure to not allow it to expand negative.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's helplines. There's a domestic abuse helplines. There's a women aid helpline as well. And even if you're not able to come out, there's also the schools. When you're taking your child to school or workplaces, you can instantly speak to them,
Mm-hmm.
and they will help you as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the way it was years ago. There was support, but it wasn't as great. But now it's much more greater, because as
Mm-hmm.
soon as you mention that you're going through an abusive relationship, there was always support.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel like there ain't no support. There will always be support. And as I say, my way is the way of you having a safety plan and making sure that you're able to get away from the abuser.
Okay, thank you for that. And thank you so much for sharing, being vulnerable and being transparent.
Thank you.
And